Welcome back to another episode of Legion PC Mods. My name is Nate, and today we'll be running through the build process of our budget PC. We'll look at the processes and steps involved, and we'll go into some detail for those doing it for the first time. After that, we'll do a benchmark run, which will be a separate video after this, and we'll see what performance we can get out of our budget PC parts. Stay tuned.
Before we get started on the build, we're going to need a few things to get the build done. In my little box here, I have a little container full of all the little bolts and fan screws that I'm going to need. I've got thermal paste for the CPU. I'll be using Arctic Silver 5, it's good middle ground paste. Not the best, not the worst. Can usually get it from most shops. I've got Medi swabs for cleaning CPU components. They're a 70% isopropyl alcohol. You really want 90 or higher percent isopropyl alcohol ideally, but 70% is still quite good, and they just throw away, they'll do the job. For tools, we have a pair of pliers for getting into tight spaces. We may not need them, but they're just handy to have. I have a range of screwdrivers, so I've got a small flathead, really easy prying into things. Hopefully we don't need it, but we'll see. And two different Phillips heads, a smaller and a fatter. Also, to tidy things up at the end, we've also got cable ties. These come in really handy for cleaning up all those messy cables on that PSU. In they go, and off we go. So to begin our build process, we already have the CPU installed. This came pre-installed in the motherboard. It has been delidded probably about 10 months ago. That's a process where the IHS, which is this surface area here, is removed from the chip, and the thermal paste between the processor and the IHS itself is replaced because the stuff Intel use isn't the best. So that's actually, but the heat spreader is being retained by the bracket at the moment, so we don't want to take that out. We're just going to leave that as it is, and we're going to mount the cooler first because it can be the most difficult part when you're using one of these Contact 21 coolers. The base plate itself is already underneath. I've put that under and I've lined up the holes, and I've got to be very careful that I don't move that motherboard because otherwise it's going to create issues. So when it comes to thermal paste application, some people prefer to use the P method with a pea-sized dot in the center, and the pressure, the mounting pressure of the cooler down on that will spread it out in a circle. The die area of the CPU actually runs north-south, probably about the width of my finger. I probably shouldn't touch that, but I have anyway. So my preferred method with this particular cooler is either a thick line down that way or two shorter ones. This paste actually spreads really well. It's quite, well, it's thin, it's not thick like many others. So one line down the middle. I'll just see if I can use the remainder of this tube before I open the next one. That line down the middle will put the paste right over the top of the CPU die. Now, because of the uneven surface of the Thermaltake cooler, I'm also going to add a little bit to that and spread that around, because when you've got these uneven surfaces, it takes a lot more thermal paste to make up for the lack of contact. So we're going to position the cooler as closely as we can over the holes. Won't always be perfect. You just give it a little bit of mounting pressure, just it'll start sliding around a little bit. That's just the thermal paste. So we'll line him up with the hole, and we'll put the first screw in, but we won't do it up. That's just to hold you there. Actually, what I should have done beforehand, little tip, remove the fan so that you can actually get to the mounting holes. We'll drop him off, or her, gender neutral fan. And we'll just reposition this slightly. Get these holes lined up. Now it's always best to work opposite corners. That gets a more even mounting pressure. So I've pinned one corner. And now the fabulous task of pinning the next. So we're only doing them up perhaps halfway. Most of the jobs I do are halfway. So now that they're all roughly halfway tight, we're just going to work corner to corner, starting in this one, and moving to this one, and to this corner, which is tricky to reach with those fantastic heat sinks. I love these heat sinks, but they're really in an awkward position. And finally the bottom corner. There we go. So now that we're around the other side of the board, we're ready to install our RAM modules. We have two 4GB kits, which will give us a total of 8GB. So we'll be populating 2 of the 4 DIMM slots that you can see here. We'll be populating slot A2 and B2, so we've got A1, A2, B1, B2. We're populating slot A2 and B2 because it gives better RAM compatibility and also better clearance between the cooler, so a little bit better airflow, which is important with your cooler and your RAM. On the RAM module itself, you can see that there is a notch just about possibly 1/3 of the way up. And there is also a corresponding notch in the DIMM slot. You want those to line up for the RAM to go in. Then make sure you've got your short side with your short side. And just sit it gently in first, making sure that the clips are in the up position. And it should seat probably about 80% of the way. You're going to need just a little bit of force on either end of the stick to complete the installation. You'll hear the 2 clicks, and that is 100% installed. And then it's the repeat procedure into the last slot. And that is RAM installed. Okay, so now we've got the case laid on its side, and this gives us a better view inside where you can see the hard drive already installed. There's an SSD just inside here, the Samsung 830. It's a 64 gig. It's just enough for an operating system, and that's about it. It has a 520 megabyte per second read speed, which is pretty good for load times. The 160 megabyte per second write times, there's a lot better nowadays with modern SSDs, but it'll do the job for what we need in a budget PC, really help that Windows load time. The Seagate is a 500 gigabyte drive, 7200 RPM. It's got a 16 meg cache, and it runs pretty well for an old drive. That'd be a 2012 purchase as well. So both of those drives are from 2012 and still running perfectly. Just your ordinary CD-ROM drive up the top. They've got the 2 ordinary case fans in the front. I think they're about 900 RPM from memory. And we've already got 1 Thermaltake ring fan installed. Alright, so our case is pretty much ready to accept the motherboard. We've got the standoffs in the ATX positions. The positions are marked by stampings in each position, so I've placed them in the positions corresponding to the ATX markings. It's quite fine to pick up by the cooler since it's thoroughly secured. And then we're going to just pop in there, because what you really would like to do before securing the motherboard is remembering the I/O shield. Now he goes this way, so we're going to match up on the board like so. So he just goes in this slot at the back. Sometimes they can be a bit tricky, and watch out for unfinished metal, especially on cheaper cases. It can be quite sharp. There you go, pop in, clip, clip. Fantastic. And now we can just line those up, and we'll sit up on those standoffs. That keeps the motherboard from shorting out on the case. There's a lot of circuitry on the back of the motherboard. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to stand the case up and put the power supply in and start routing some power supply cables. That way we can put the fans in afterwards, because there's a spot just up here where we need to route the 8-pin, and if we put the fans in first, fat chance of getting to it. Alright, here we have our PSU. Fairly simple installation thanks to the no PSU shroud on these old cases. There goes that fan, we'll forget he ever existed. Back to the job. I'm going to sit on there and I'm going to set him up to pull air from underneath. That way he's not pulling any of the case air, which can be a little bit warmer, but if you set it up right it's probably not going to be much warmer, but I'd rather not. I'd rather just pick up fresh air from outside, just ambient air to cool itself. It's not going to be bothered by the system temperature at all. So it's a simple act of lining up these holes with regular case screws, and screwing those in to secure the PSU in place. There's several cutouts, but they're for different PSUs. May have different mounting points. It's a bit universal this way. On the case it can fit a couple of different types. There's usually 4. I just dropped one. So I'll get the 3 in and that'll do us for now, and then I'll find the 4th later. That's not going anywhere for now. Okay, so we're having a little lighting issue, and I've gone and got heating like laser face, a halogen light that burns everything it touches. That should hopefully give us enough light to continue. We're going to start by getting through some of the smaller cords. I find if you get the smaller cords done first, the bigger ones can help keep them in place. I attribute that particular saying to Salazar from Salazar Studios. Bit of a shout out to him. A very good YouTube video channel. That's what I meant to say. Video channel to keep an eye on. Okay, one thing I did forget to mention is the USB 3 connector on this motherboard is in fact broken. So we won't be using that. That'll just be surplus to our needs at this point. Okay, now the big fella, well, the long fella. This is our 8-pin. This is going to power at the top of our motherboard. So he's going to come through the back. There's a little tiny little spot just up in this back corner, which I find if you jiggle it just right, here he goes. And you can't do that if that fan is installed. Out of the way. That'll approximately run along here, and that'll eventually be zip tied in place. As you can see, we're starting to get some cables through, ready to be managed. We have a look from the front. And we have what it looks like from the front. The 24-pin SATA cables and our SATA power. We'll manage them a little better towards the end. And our PCIe for graphics card. And of course all the little midget cables. That's next. Now that we've got these little demon plugs, we're probably going to start with the larger ones. Get them out of the way and then worry about the smaller ones. So we've got power switch and reset switch. On the motherboard, you have to get up real close. I don't think my camera can pick this up. But there's super tiny writing that you probably need a telescope to read. So what we've got here, power switch. You look for the markings, power switch, which are these two right here. Get him settled on the 2 that are marked power switch. Fairly straightforward once you find them. reset switch, it should be nearby, and it is, and that's just a circuit completion. Polarity doesn't matter with those. Now we've got the hard drive LED. That does matter. So there's a little triangle on one of the lines, on one of the wires. Now that will be your negative. You want to line that up with LED negative, or as it's marked on here, IDE, which is your hard drive. So I'll pop them on. They fit snugly on there. And now we've got the two baby ones. We've got power negative and power positive, which are top left, PLED, so power LED, and positive is to the left side. I have the positive one, so we'll plug him into the left terminal. Make sure you've got them lined up. You don't want to go bending or breaking them. Not that it's that big of a deal, it just means your power LED won't function. And those little things would be annoying. That's the fiddly one's done. It's starting to look like a computer. You stay out of the way. So now we're going to go around the back. Just make sure we didn't mess up any of those cables. Watch us tilt it over. They're all in place. Okay, good. So now we're going to reposition, we're going to fit some fans, then we'll fit a GPU, and then we will do some cable management. Okay, so we're going to stick this sickle flow fan on the rear, and to do that we're going to need our screwdriver and our screws. Okay, so this I'll be intaking with. And the reason for that is because I want to supply some fresh air, because these two top fans will be exhausting and we're pulling the heat out. So you'll have air coming in the front via the constant speed of the case fans. They'll be just pushing a little bit of gentle air, a little bit of pressure, keeping all your drives cool. Not that they really overheat, but just, it's better than nothing. So they'll be supplying a little bit of air. We've got a little opening at the bottom here. I would put a fan in it, but it gets very, very noisy because it's close to the table. And you'll also have your blower fan of the GPU there. So that'll be pulling air up into the GPU fan and out the back. But also some of the ones supplied by this one will start to come this way, and it'll get pulled up past the ram sticks by the exhaust, so you'll have a constant flow past your heat spreaders. You'll have fresh air being pulled this way and up through the heatsink, and then more vacuum on this side, which will pull the air up and out. So there's a constant flow of air going this way and up, and this way and up, which will give fresh air past the VRMs, it'll give fresh air past the RAM sticks, and it will pull a little bit of fresh air into the GPU. Fresh is best, so we want fresh air in, crap air out. Easy as that. Now we're going to set this so that the cord is in the top corner and can easily pass through the back for easy cable management, rather than having it over here and then going, oh no, we need to go over here. Just neat and tidy. If you think about where you're going to put it before you put it, it makes things a lot easier. Lovely. And we now have an intake fan in the rear. Some people might tell you that this is a horrible idea. It might be, but the main reason why it would be a horrible idea is because someone has put their case up against a wall, an obstruction at the back of the case. Now, even if this was a traditional exhaust fan, that's still a bad idea because it's up against the wall. The bad idea is not the fan placement. The bad idea is keeping the back of your computer up against a wall. That's just a place where you can trap hot air and cause all sorts of general nastiness. Okay, so we've got the Thermaltake and the Cooler Master sickle flow fan installed. Here's another sickle flow that I've got. They're a $9 brand new fan. You can pick them up from places like Scorptech and PC Case Gear. They're around about 2000 RPM. They're not PWM. They claim to be silent, well, relatively silent at 19 dBA, but they push some really good static pressure, almost 3mm H2O, while pumping out about 69 CFM, so really good airflow as well. I'm not really sold on how quiet they are, which is why I've only put one so far in the system and I haven't put another two in the front. But what I'll end up doing probably is having a look at the thermals. If the thermals aren't great, I'll try switching 2 more sickle flows into the front and see if that changes anything, but I think we'll be fine. I think we'll have enough airflow for this case. Okay, so now we have the cabling finished. As you can see, there was a slight change in plans as far as the routing went, since there was no cutouts to cable tie down the bottom here, so instead I've ran a little zigzag for that main line up this side, one straight down the guts for the big stuff using bigger zip ties, and then a cheeky little one to the hard drive cages and up around the top here in this space for the front fans. Then the only thing to do, once you're happy with the positioning and you think it's all going to fit fine, you can test it if you want, but I'm happy with this. Just go along, cut off the fingers of all your zip ties just to neaten it right up. It's always better to use more. Just make sure you got everything really nailed down so it's not moving. You should never have a problem getting your case panels off and on. And these little bits of attention to detail are a good habit to get into when you're building your PCs. Alright, back done. Dusty old side panel. We'll just go straight on, no problemos. Okay, back to the front side, and now all that's left to put in is the GPU, which I've placed just over here. We've already got the tabs removed and we're putting it in the top PCIe 3 slot. Simple case of line those little tabs and those little tabs. Click him in. That's in place. We need a couple of these tension screws. That'll hold him in. Not that these are a heavy card, but you don't want to move them around anyway. Actually, after owning a R9 290, owning a 970, they're phenomenally light. And they make bugger all noise, bugger all heat. Okay. Now all we need is to plug this in. And there we go. Everything is installed, routed, trimmed. And ready to try to boot. Now the reason why I didn't route this around the back is because there is some point in time where I may want to get to those really quickly. If I want to add an SLI card or swap out to something else, maybe with different connectors. So I thought I'd just keep that up front. Just bundled them together, which should keep them all out of the way. System ready. Switching that on is good. Good for making things go. So those jet flows are certainly not 19 dBA, a little more than that. Certainly glad now that we didn't use 3 of them. Okay, so the system is running. It's running perfectly fine and as it should. As you can see, the RAM's running at its stock 1333 CL9. The idling on the package at about 24C, and there's nothing happening at all. And it's boosting itself to 3800 when it needs to, and dropping itself to 1600 when it needs to. So all is running well, especially that fan that's a million decibels. Might have to change that out for a PWM jet flow. But overall, not bad. Off she goes.
Thanks for tuning into the Legion PC Mods budget build log and sharing this little adventure together. This is an in-depth video that ran a lot longer than usual, and we at Legion PC Mods are grateful for the time that our viewers spend with our channel. Today we saw the steps and methods used to turn a pile of parts into a working PC, and I hope that there was something for most people to enjoy and take away from the video. Stay tuned for the final video in the series, where we test the performance of the budget PC build through a range of stress tests and in-game benchmarks. I look forward to bringing this content to you, and I'm excited to discover what sort of game machine we've put together here today. Until then, I'm Nate for Legion PC Mods. May the frames be with you. Cheers.